As far as well-known game developers and directors go, Hideo Kojima is no stranger to fans of interactive entertainment. You probably know him from his most famous video game creation, the Metal Gear series. In his childhood, he had aspirations of being an artist and eventually went to university with the goal of becoming a filmmaker. He surprised his friends in college in his 4th year with saying that he wanted to try his hand at developing games. And while his Metal Gear series shows a lot of film influence and is now being touted as an amazing combination of both interactive and cinematic storytelling, the original MSX Metal Gear was not where Kojima's filmmaking studies were best showcased in my opinion. After all, it was one of the first games he worked on, and the first that he wrote, but it was the second game that he directed that really showed not only Kojima's love for the cinema, but his influence from studying film at university. Originally released for the fantastic MSX in 1988, Snatcher is an excellent example of a video game that contains cinematic qualities, using things like cutscenes, different viewing angles for the action, and in some versions, even voice acting. These were mixed in with the interactive elements you'd expect in a video game. In Snatcher's case, these interactive elements were presented in a standard adventure game menu setting. Unfortunately, due to the lack of the impact the MSX computers had in the West, we did not get treated to this classic until 1994, when they finally saw fit to release it in the West on the Sega CD. On June 6, 1996, a bioweapon in development was released into the atmosphere. This toxin, known as Lucifer Alpha, kills half the world's population and later becomes known as the Catastrophe. 14 years afterwards, the Third World War breaks out over possession of the areas affected the most by Lucifer Alpha, namely Northern Eurasia. 50 years after the catastrophe, a new biohazard, a bioroid disguised as a human, is discovered in the wreckage of a plane near Neo Kobe, a man-made island in immigrants' heaven. These robots, which appear mostly in winter, kill humans, take on their appearance, and replace them in society. Several of them are found in the ensuing years, each a rather important person in society, resulting in a government panic. Neo Kobe is sealed off from the outside world. Government agencies and police agencies create groups to fight the Snatchers, but after a few months combine the two into one smaller unit, known as Junker. We are the newest member of Junker, who just transferred to Neo Kobe City from the military, the amnesiac Gillian Seed, who at the beginning of the game informs his estranged wife Jamie of his decision to join the Junker team.
It's the only way we can regain our lost memories. Snatcher is the only word that keeps coming back every time we try to remember our pasts.
I'm Gillian Seed. I've been assigned to Junker headquarters effective today.
Oh, you're Mr. Seed. Please forgive me. My name is Mika Slayton. I'm the administrative assistant and operator here at Junker headquarters. Very pleased to meet you.
The game begins inside the lobby of Junker headquarters, and we can take a look at some of the basic ways Snatcher is played. By and large, Snatcher is a graphic adventure game. Unlike other games, however, only relevant options are displayed on the screen, meaning the experience is a little bit more streamlined and far more accessible than some other games in the genre. Mika Slayton, the operator of Junker, gives us a tour of the facility and introduces us to the big man in charge of Junker, former Foxhound agent Benson Cunningham. He gives Gillian his Junker identification and explains the simple rules of being a Junker agent. Don't harm real people. In every room in the game, you're able to explore most of the objects in the office as long as they're available in the menu, and the Chief seems to have a rather weird obsession with his taste in art too. Junkers are required to not harm any innocent civilians while carrying out their investigations, but they are required to eliminate the Snatchers that they find. However, it is hard, if not impossible, to tell them apart from authentic humans. And that is what's causing the panic in the city in the first place. Anyone and everyone could be a Snatcher. Chief Cunningham also provides us with some cash and sends us to get equipped with a blaster and a navigator. And it's at this point we can see how Snatcher differs a little bit more from other graphic adventure games. Gillian will ask Mika to borrow her ray gun for some target practice at the Junker shooting range. Now, if you're familiar with other Sega CD games like Lethal Enforcer, you could plug in the Justifier light gun you got from that game and actually play Snatcher's action segments as if it was a light gun game. Or if you're like me and don't think Lethal Enforcers is a very good game and don't own the required accessory, you can hold down one button to aim the gun and press another to fire. This may not look too hard, but these action segments can get very fast-paced and very difficult quickly, so practicing at the shooting range is a recommended hobby for aspiring Junkers. Finally, we get to meet Harry, the friendly engineer at Junker. At 55 years old, Harry has won several Nobel Prizes for his work, both for peaceful purposes and war-related. He formerly developed weapons during the Third World War, but now works for Junker. His guns are the only thing known to take out a Snatcher, and he provides Gillian with a blaster that he gladly accepts.
It's got full user feedback circuitry, adjusting itself to your reaction time. In other words, it's just as good as you are. What do you think? Here, see how she feels. It's unbelievably light. You bet it is. This ain't one of those ray guns the Army uses.
He also presents Gillian with his personal robotic navigator, a sort of personal assistant, if you will, designed specifically for each Junker.
All right, allow me to introduce the navigator, which I designed especially for you. Hey, Metal Gear, get out here!
Metal Gear Mark II joins Gillian in his investigation and helps with data management and placing video phone calls. Metal Gear's a fun character. He's not only really good at helping you out with the investigation, but he also serves as comic relief during the game, because he can be really snarky and sometimes very blunt with his comments. Metal and Gillian's interactions, be them friendly or combative, are part of the charm that makes Snatcher such a unique experience. However, now that he has all of his equipment, you'd expect Gillian to be able to start his first day on a little bit of an easy note. Unfortunately, that doesn't happen.
I have a video phone call from Jean-Jacques Gibson coming in. Connecting.
Junker HQ, this is Gibson. I've cornered a probable male Snatcher. I'm in the abandoned factory in the M District. Request immediate backup.
That distress call comes from Jean Gibson, Junker's ace runner. Gillian and Metal take off to provide backup at the abandoned factory, tossing Gillian and we, the player, into the action right away. Orientation is over and it's time for the first field assignment. Moving around in Snatcher is fairly simple, but if you'll notice, there's not always a command to simply move forward. You're forced in most situations to examine and look at everything, getting an understanding for the scene and situation before either something happens or deciding to move forward. In the case of the abandoned factory Jean is hunting the Snatchers in...
Oh no!
What was that?
A male scream. Perhaps something has happened to Jean-Jacques.
These type of event triggers, as I like to call them, are abundant, so get used to examining and looking at things often, sometimes repeating actions more than 2 or 3 times before finally proceeding. It's a bit of a drawback, and I do understand that argument, but if you're like me, you'll be too wrapped up in this complex world to really care about pushing an extra command a few times. Inside the factory, Metal and Gillian see no sign of Jean, but do find his navigator, Little John, smashed into pieces by Snatchers. Going forward, though, Gillian and Metal find something they had hoped to prevent.
Oh!
Dear God.
This is probably 20 minutes into the game, and it should be clear now that Snatcher pulls no punches. Jean's head is twisted clean off and lays in front of his body. That scream we heard outside was his. Gillian never gets to meet his would-be partner, and this is a shocking way to make his acquaintance. Remember, this game originally came out in 1988, and this version was released in 1994. And this helped land Snatcher a more mature rating at the time, possibly contributing to the lack of sales for the game. We can examine Jean's body for skin and hair samples of his attacker, and Metal informs Gillian that both are Snatchers. They find some items in his pockets as well, which you need to examine and look at a few times before Gillian finally decides to pick them up. You can also find out what Jean was eating recently in an attempt to figure out what he had been up to before he died. You find that he was eating buffalo meat, an illegal cuisine in the city. All of these are vital clues to find out where Jean had been recently and who he had been tailing. 2 figures show up on Metal's motion detector, but they quickly slip away in a room with no exits. A faint noise is heard, and Metal's solution is to break the 4th wall. Eventually, we find the source of the noise, and it's time to scram.
Whoa!
A time bomb?
Evacuate immediately! There is little time!
Escape from the factory is hindered by the first real battle against the spider-like insector robots the Snatchers use for protection, further cementing the fact that your fellow Junker was killed by the body-stealing robots. The first battles are easy with the controller, but it's actually insanely uncomfortable to do this because you have to hold down one button to aim and press another button to fire. You can adjust what button does what each time you start Snatcher, but I found no comfortable way to do this. I started laying the controller down and using 2 fingers that way to press the buttons, and it worked, but some battles make your fingers really hurt because they do actually last a while. These battles get really intense, trust me.
I am incapable of locomotion.
What on earth are you blabbering about? Let's go! It's gonna blow!
Please save yourself. I am paralyzed with fear.
Oh, I can't believe this stupid robot! Come on! Jeez, my ears are really ringing.
That's because you left the volume turned up.
Huh, good one, Metal, asshole. After reporting what happened back to HQ, you're met with a sobering fact that Gillian is the last runner for the Junkers, and he now has to find out what Jean was investigating and why did he have to die. What did he learn that made him a target for the Snatchers? Out of the rest of the team, Harry is kind of taking it the hardest.
Well, so our new Junker has returned.
I register high alcohol levels. Harry is intoxicated.
I really thought you were better than that.
Harry,
What kind of backup was that supposed to be? If you were a better junker than that, Jean wouldn't have had to die out there.
Gillian can call Jean's informant to get some information about the Snatchers and what Jean might have been up to. After solving Napoleon's riddle, you'll be able to meet with him in Alton Plaza, part of Neo Kobe's shopping district. Before setting off though, we gotta look through Jean's personal effects in the office, turning up a chess piece, some ulcer medication, and a floppy disk. Now remember, this is 2047. When was the last time you used a floppy disk? Before going to meet with Gibson's informant, it might be best to check on his daughter Katrina. We also have that chess piece and the floppy disk to check out, plus a note from Gibson's pocket about searching the house. Katrina won't let us in without some proof of who we are, and the only proof she's going to accept isn't a Junker ID. It's a description of her thighs, namely a birthmark on her inner thigh. Don't tease Gillian, my dear. He is a lonely, lonely man.
I'm very sorry about all of that. I'm Katrina Gibson, Sean's daughter.
I'm so sorry.
What's the matter, Mr. Seed?
I'm very sorry, Katrina. It's my fault your father's dead.
Gillian.
No, if I could have gotten there just a little sooner, your father might still be alive.
Katrina, with her father's death, now has lost both of her parents to attacks from Snatchers, and she's hoping Gillian can finally put a stop to the evil bioroids. She helps us find Gibson's old computer, which seems to accept the floppy disk we found in his office. And it seems Gibson was making some real progress on identifying the Snatchers.
Snatchers' vampire-like behavior is due to their desire to avoid exposure to sunlight. The reason they dislike sunlight is because of their defective artificial skin. Long-term exposure to ultraviolet rays causes overproduction of melanocytes in the epidermis of their artificial skin, leading to a form of skin cancer with the characteristics of melanoma.
So the Snatchers are mostly nocturnal and work in the winter to avoid the harmful rays of the sun, because even a small amount of those rays could be fatal to them. They also invest heavily in sunscreen, of which Sean has a bottle he's found. Skin cancer gives them away, and they apparently have a facility used to treat those of their kind with skin cancer. If Gillian can find that, he's golden. It is possible to get kicked out of Katrina's house if you continue to hit on her, an option you can exploit if you want to live dangerously. Don't do it too much though, or she will actually kick you out, which sucks because you actually need to let her cool down for a long while before she lets you back in. So it's not exactly something I would advise you doing. It's funny, don't get me wrong, but keep in mind that Gillian's heart has been snatched by his estranged wife.
Get out! And I thought you were such a gentleman. Don't come back either.
Speaking of his wife, it's good to stop by Gillian's apartment to see how the amnesiac bachelor lives. Even though they're disillusioned, Gillian keeps a photo of Jamie around on his counter. It's an old photo too, showing Jamie at the Moscow Olympics. It must be a fake, Gillian and Metal summarize, because it was made 50 years ago. Jamie's a good girl too, also having amnesia. They had nothing to base their relationship on, so they decided to split up, but Gillian's made several attempts to patch up their broken relationship. So like most men, when he's upset at the woman he loves, he tosses himself at other women in order to feel better. Consider women Gillian's weakness. Poor guy really is messed up, which Metal Gear decides to point out on several occasions whenever Jamie comes up. It's also important to call your wife every so often, as she can provide some hints and some insight in the investigation, and sometimes the game will flat out not proceed until you talk to her. But calling Jamie isn't a chore because you get to see how realistic these two characters are. You can tell there's a loving air between them, but the tension is extremely evident as well. Neo-Kobe is an interesting city. It's a wide mix of different races and cultures, and could probably be considered more of a melting pot than a lot of people consider America to be. Mika points out at the beginning of the game after meeting Gillian that Neo-Kobe is Japan, but it isn't Japan at the same time, and Alton Plaza does a good job of showing that. At different points in the adventure, Gillian and Metal can interact with different groups of people in the plaza, activating small cutscenes or scoring video phone numbers for places like Konami itself, or some sex hotlines. Napoleon arrives, and after paying him from the Junker Petty Cash Fund, he informs you of Jean's stomping grounds and the only Buffalo restaurant that he knows of, a masquerade club called Outer Heaven. Let's go ahead and chalk up another Metal Gear reference, thank you. However, we can't get in because we need a special premium designer mask. Snobs, I say.
Welcome to Outer Heaven! Table for one?
The doorman at Outer Heaven, dressed as a wolfman, informs us where we could buy these designer masks, a black market superstore known as Plato's Cavern. The shopkeeper sells a few things, but the mask is what we're really here for. We'll pick one up and mosey along, but, we might as well try to buy some happiness while we're here. Since Neo-Kobe is a culturally rich city, it's only natural there be some new culinary creations lining the street. One such thing is Neo-Kobe Pizza, a pizza that you dunk in soup. Investigations are hard, so let's take a quick break and take a bite to eat before going back to Outer Heaven.
Alright, let's try one of these floating pizza things.
Sounds good to me.
Give us 2 regular Neo-Kobe pizzas.
2 coming up! You gotta put it in the soup yourself, okay?
Okay. Here we go, Metal. Here's yours.
Let's put them in on the count of 3, okay? They get bland and soggy if they stay in too long.
No problem. Ready? 1, 2, 3!
Very good! Now in a few seconds they'll come floating up. When they do, pull yours out right away, okay? Don't mess it up.
I'm ready. Come on up, little fellas.
Hey, here comes one. Oh, that's mine. Come here, you.
Nice snag there, Metal. Hey, where's mine?
Oh, this is unusual.
Oh.
I wonder what the problem is.
I want my pizza. Where's my pizza?
What's the problem? Yours not coming back up?
My pizza?
Hey, really sorry about that. Happens every now and then. You'll forgive us there, won't you now, buddy?
Gillian, perhaps we should go.
My Neo-Kobe pizza. It sank just like the rest of this city's gonna.
Let's get going, Gillian.
I can't believe that. I'll never waste my money on one of those stupid things again.
With Gillian's hopes of a good meal sunk to the bottom of the soup bowl, we return to Outer Heaven in full masked regalia and ready to find out why Jean was eating buffalo here. There's a lot to see inside Outer Heaven, especially some exquisite dancing. There's a ton of characters also dressed up as old Konami characters, such as Spikester, Simon Belmont. The entire Konami gang is here for the most part, but they don't know anything about Snatchers or Jean. Gillian can order a few drinks and even buffalo while he's here, and everyone cooperates pretty nicely. Showing evidence is a simple menu command away, but no one seems to know Jean. But remember, there's some things you may not want to show anybody because you don't want to cause a panic.
You're in the wrong joint, buddy! Forget about the check! Just get out of my place now!
The dancer, however, saw Gibson on the night the masks were not required. Questioning her reveals Gibson may have been tailing someone, and in order to blend in on a night where masks were not required, he was eating buffalo, which made him sick due to his ulcer. We're finally on to Gibson's tale. The dancer Isabella gives us a physical description of the perp Gibson was following, and just like a real detective, we'll need to take some actual notes. After getting a description, we can head back to HQ and compile a composite through Jordan, turning up 2 probable matches: Ivan Rodriguez and Freddie Nielsen. Looks like we may have our man. One of these guys has to have killed Gibson. We'll continue this retrospective and overview soon, so please come back and check out part 2 real soon. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you back here next time.